Good evening, everyone. It's Sunday, I was going to say June 4th, no, June 8th, 2025, 1 p.m. here, Central Standard Time in Champaign, Illinois. Okay, bit of a rough start. You're joining me today to start a new case of Dear Holmes, this one called The Friendly Hand of Death. Before we get too far into it, let's just check in with the chat. I like public speaking. If I've prepared a talk, I actually enjoy giving a lecture, giving a talk, talking on YouTube. But you can see constitutionally different people. There are lots of people who hate public speaking, and I remember there are some stories about how like it's a huge fear of some people. But then there are people who are completely natural, and they don't get anxious. They just can speak calmly. It's of no greater import to them than speaking to a friend. I'm in the middle there. I like public speaking. I like talking to a group. However, my heart rate goes up and I like forget to breathe. So weird things happen. I'm like enjoying it. But if I like look at it, if I stand back from myself and look at it, like I can see I'm not relaxed. Maybe halfway into the discussion, I get relaxed, but you could see that when I do the intros, like I trip over my words sometimes because my brain is just not relaxed. Okay. Looks like we've got the normal group here. Anna has jumped in. Anna, I was just talking about her cases for New York Noir. Anna has written 3 cases that haven't been play tested. And Debbie Levy has been suggesting that we play a New York Noir case on the channel, maybe one of mine, run through it. I was thinking about how to do that. But we are going to be playing some New York Noir cases on the channel soon, whether they're Anna's or the new case that I've written, which I do want to promote a little bit. I have written a new case called Foxtrot East. It is available for playtesters now. I finally convinced a couple people to playtest it. It's a difficult case. It's a very long case, maybe twice as long as my previous case called The Wrong Book. If you're feeling nervy, if you're feeling like you want to play test it, you should start by playing the first tutorial case for New York Noir, but I'd love to have more playtesters. You can find that on Board Game Geek or on the Discord for the Call for Two channel. Teresa says, maybe a fidget toy might help calm you down. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the fidget toys. I like being anxious. I like that. I roll with it. I embrace it. Okay, what else should we talk about before we get started? Last week, we played the second case in the Backstories series. I was just looking to see if it's behind me on the wall somewhere, but I don't see it. We played Backstories, the Emerald Wedding Anniversary, sort of choose your own adventure card-based game with a hook. And we played the previous one called Alone Under the Ice several months ago. But this last one we played, I loved. I absolutely loved. And I think if you're a designer interested in this space of choose your own adventure, small card-based games, you should study that Backstories Emerald Wedding Anniversary because it does some things very well. And it was really fun and interesting to play. And we're going to play through it again soon in a week or two. Anna says, I've had 5 playtesters. We found a few bugs, nothing major. Okay, well, everyone liked the cases. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. If you're trying something new, writing a new case for New York Noir or making a new play-by-mail game, don't worry so much. I mean, as I said, anxiety is not all bad. Like if you're nervous about a test, so you study for it, that's great. But it doesn't have to be good. Like even if Addis cases are terrible, they are interesting enough that I'd love to play them on the channel. So we are going to play Anna's cases on the channel for sure. It's just a matter of when. Now, I think I'm going to play something tonight, and I'm up for suggestions. But let's talk about Dear Holmes. So last week, we normally play Dear Holmes every Sunday at 1 p.m. Last week, I had my game design diary update for New York Noir. That's why that's on my mind so much. But we're now kicking off a new case. It's a case called The Friendly Hand of Death. Now, the last case we played from Dear Holmes was from the Practice Club that this company mails out, and was one of the very oldest cases they ever made for Dear Holmes, maybe the third case or so. And it was all puzzle focused. 5 letters, the 5th letter was just a solution to all the other puzzles. All of the other letters were one puzzle at a time. The case we're playing today is the opposite. Well, I don't know if it's going to be puzzles, but the case we're playing today is the second most recent case. It's the most recent case other than the one they just finished delivering. So it's going to be a really interesting contrast to compare the oldest Dear Holmes case with the newest Dear Holmes case. There are a couple of things different about this case that I'm curious about. The first one is that there's some weird thing going on with the date of the first letter. I hope it's not a terrible mistake. The second thing that's a little odd, this company, Dear Holmes, I don't know how to describe it. They're not the most organized, but they've got some real heart in them. When I contact support and I'm like, this letter wasn't delivered or whatever, I always get a reply. They're always nice and they always fix it. But there's some weird things happening. And one little interesting thing is that Rob, who's in the channel and joins us for these playthroughs, Rob and I have been collecting a spreadsheet of all the Dear Holmes cases and trying to organize which ones I'm missing, which ones I have. And the envelopes aren't labeled well, so often I just cut them open to check the first date to make sure I file them away. And we can see that the way Dear Holmes does it is that they hire off authors to write cases. Different authors write different cases, not like one core group. It's like guest authors, fiction writers write cases. And Rob has been keeping track when he can of who writes what cases, and then there's certain people that have written many cases. This case, something odd happened. I got an email from the author of this case saying, hey, do you have a copy of this case? Because I never get a copy when I write a case for Dear Holmes. They don't send me the finished copy. So it's a little weird that the author of this case didn't get sent by Dear Holmes like proofs or, here's the letters. You want to check, make a final check? It's a little confusing to me. But that's also a little warning that I may be a little reluctant to be too critical of this case. In general, though, I tend to like all the Dear Holmes cases. I like this format so much, I'm more forgiving of it than these boxed games. So I'm normally not very hard on Dear Holmes. Some of you are, which is fine. Be as hard as you want. But there you go, a little bit putting my biases up front. It's not like I'm great friends with the writer. I just got one email. which reminds me a little bit of Rob Oren. Does anyone here watch Rob's Tabletop World, Rob Oren's YouTube channel? Like, I watch it. He's so full of bullshit sometimes, but okay, it's like there are things you watch just to watch. All right, let's get started. The Friendly Hand of Death. So we've got 4 letters in the new cases, as you know. All right, you remember how this goes. We're going to read the letter. We'll revisit it each week. At the end, we try to solve it. So now, here's the weird thing about this first letter. It's got like dates that don't quite line up with the other letters. Is there anything else to talk about before we get started? Any projects anyone's been working on? Movies? There are a couple good movies out now. You know what movie is out that I really want to see? There's a comedian that I love. I mean, I love the cringe humor stuff, and it's Tim Robbins, I think. And he has a new movie called Friendship that looks like a movie-length version of some of his skits. But I just love that. Melissa says, has anyone else been watching Sherlock and Daughter? I have, and it's pretty good. I was trying to watch on recommendation in the Discord Bodkin, and I tried watching season 4 of Stranger Things, and it's just terrible. Does someone know? Have we figured out the science of why shows go bad? Is it because they've got all their creative energies in the beginning and they don't have it in the end? Is it because there's some natural thing that happens? Is it psychology of the humans watching it that things get old? It's so hard to finish a series without becoming terrible. Department Q on Netflix, says D. Yes, I've seen some recommendations by those of you about Department Q. There are a couple of shows that are great, that ended perfectly. If you haven't watched Ripley on Netflix, it's really good and gets better and better. And there are a couple of shows that really managed to make it to the end and be great. What's the one with what is the series that Bill Hader did about a hitman? It's like a one word, it's the name, his character's name. Who can remind me? What's that series? Perfect. 9 Perfect Strangers. I don't know that one. Anyway, Bill Hader's show about a hitman is pretty brilliant. All right, I guess we'll get Barry. Yes, Barry, that's what it's called. I recommend it. All right, let's get started here. It's a letter from John H. Watson, 221B Baker Street, London, 28 September 1896. Dear Detective, I trust that you have been well since our last correspondence. I can report that Holmes is in good health and is currently in Holland at the behest of the reigning family. I'm also well, but suddenly find myself engaged with a most pressing medical case. So I'm writing to request your assistance with another anomalous investigation. 2 days ago, the asphyxiated body of one Philip Hillcrest Nelson member of the notorious Skeleton Club in Newington Green, was discovered in the club's strong room. Since then, we have learned of 2 other strange recent incidents involving 2 others named Philip H. Nelson. Inspector Hobart Floyd of Scotland Yard is investigating the death and has solicited Holmes' advice regarding the particulars, but the other events have yet to be thoroughly examined. On the hope that you will agree to assist, I am enclosing 4 items with this letter, the first of which is on the reverse of this page. A transcript of my letter to Holmes informing him of Nelson, an excerpt from the newspaper about Hillcrest Nelson's death, a copy of Floyd's police report, including a transcript of his addendum to Holmes. After reading these items, I urge you to consider these questions. How exactly did Hillcrest Nelson end up dead in the strong room? What connection, if any, is there between the 3 Nelsons? What offense did Herbert Nelson supposedly commit, and who is the offended party? I shall forward any additional correspondence if and when it arrives. In the meantime, mail any theories or conclusions you develop to our American associates. As always, Holmes and I trust in your abilities with confidence. Nonetheless, Holmes will review the facts of the case and send a duplicate of his solution once he returns to London. You should expect that letter in approximately 1 month's time. Okay, so we've got a strange death and deaths of people with the same name. My dear Holmes, I expect your journey to Amsterdam. Let me just see who's writing this. Oh, this is still Watson. My dear Holmes, I expect your journey to Amsterdam passed without incident, and that you are settled into your accommodations at the Dagen Hotel. I'm writing because 2 separate visitors sought your counsel today, and I question how best to advise them in your absence. The first visitor was Philip Herbert Nelson, 34. Nelson resides at 39 Gladstone Street in Lambeth and is employed as a barrister's clerk at Killian, Sandford and Montrose on Chancery Lane. Around 8:30 on the evening of the 24th of September, a stranger arrived at Nelson's home to deliver a directive for Philip H. Nelson. Nelson does not recall spotting a cab parked on the street or seeing other persons loitering outside, and he describes the messenger as no older than 35, of average height and build, with brown hair, mustache, beard, and eyes. He was wearing a cap and gray wool work clothes with hobnail boots. He had a Cockney accent. I inquired if the man had any distinguishing features or mannerisms, but Nelson said no, commenting, he was truly average in all respects. As for the message, the stranger said, my employer is giving you the chance to make things square. Things best be put the way they should be by tomorrow night. The messenger provided no specifics, yet he behaved as if Nelson were familiar with his employer, but Nelson insists he has no idea who it could be, and that he repeatedly said this to the messenger. Nelson's persistence eventually eroded the messenger's confidence, and he parted, saying he would inquire with his employer. But the next evening, Nelson returned home to find a note slipped under his front door. You're the one, all right. There was no envelope, and the paper was a thin brown common type without a watermark. The writing was masculine and smudgy. This morning, Nelson took the note to the police, who informed him there was nothing to be done since the stranger had broken no laws. But Nelson insisted until the police suggested he try laying out his problem to you. I asked Nelson if Killian, Sandford, and Montrose had experienced any recent conflicts with any clients, but Nelson was aware of none. I also took the liberty of inquiring if Nelson might have run afoul of any disreputable characters, but he insists that he neither gambles nor frequents low establishments. I work, I come home. I have neither family nor friends in London, and never in my life have I deliberately harmed anyone. Our other visitor was Inspector Hobart Floyd of N Division. He's in charge of investigating the death of Philip Hillcrest Nelson, a chartered accountant who resided in Knoll Park. Hillcrest Nelson's asphyxiated body was discovered this morning inside the strong room of the Skeleton Club, of which he was a member. I informed Floyd about Herbert Nelson's visit because of the odd concurrence in names, and to expedite summarizing the events of Hillcrest Nelson's death, I'm enclosing a newspaper clipping about the discovery of the body and a copy of Floyd's official report provided by the inspector. I shall forego offering any theories for now, but instead stand ready to proceed as you see best. Your faithful servant, yours faithfully, Watson. Clipping from the Pall Mall Gazette, 26 September. The Skeleton Club corpse. Member dies in infamous club's strong room. From the Central News Agency. The Skeleton Club in North London, notorious for its exclusive membership of men rejected or blackballed by more reputable clubs, suffered another blow to its character this morning when one of its members was found dead in the establishment's vault. The deceased man has been identified as Philip Nelson of the Knoll Park Model Dwelling Development. According to the club's concierge, Laurent Capuchin, Nelson arrived last evening around his usual time of 7 o'clock and passed the night playing poker. The game ended around 2 o'clock, after which Nelson stored his winnings in a safe deposit box in the vault. Nelson then departed the club around 2:15, and according to the night watchman, the vault was vacant when it was locked for the night at 3 o'clock. A member of the Skeleton Club, Dr. Joseph T. Page, was interviewed and reports that Nelson was a regular visitor to the Skeleton Club on Wednesdays and Fridays. The club opens each day at 2 in the afternoon, and Capuchin begins his preparations at precisely 11 o'clock each morning. One of his first duties is to collect the previous day's receipts from the vault to prepare a deposit. This is when he discovered Nelson's body. Scotland Yard has released no further details. However, we can report that the case has been placed in the hands of N Division's youngest inspector, Mr. Hobart Floyd, who made a name for himself during the Pentonville prison affair last year. And here's a copy of the report from the Division of Detective Department, City of London Police, 26 September 1889. From the Home Office, Department 6, 26 September 89, regarding Skeleton Club cadaver. On the 26th of September, a body was discovered in the strong room of the Skeleton Club at 5255 Newington Green. Time of discovery was 11:40 a.m. When I arrived at 12:18 p.m., Constable Dallin Crossmore, Division number N437, was on scene. Body was discovered by club's concierge, Laurent Capuchin, when he collected the previous day's receipts from the strong room after coming on duty at 11 a.m. Capuchin identified the deceased as Philip Hillcrest Nelson, age 37. Nelson's address is 22 Maurice Avenue in Knoll Park, and he worked as a freelance chartered accountant. He had been a club member since 1885. Nelson's clientele is known to include less than reputable financiers and entrepreneurs, more than a few of whom belonged to the club, but still he had a reputation for being professional and tidy as any bookkeeper in London. According to hansom driver Timothy Welby, he delivered Nelson to the Skeleton Club around 7 p.m. on the 25th of September. This is substantiated by the club's register, which shows Nelson signing in at precisely 7 p.m. Per Capuchin, Nelson visited the club nearly every Wednesday and Friday evening. Capuchin also informed me that the club's half-year statutory audit is coming up on the 1st of October, and for the past week, Nelson has been performing a preliminary audit at the establishment's request. Over that time, Nelson enjoyed access to the strong room, as well as the club's safety deposit box, where its general ledger, financial statement, and other monetary records are stored. The strong room is in the cellar of the building, and according to the vault's register, Nelson accessed it on the 18th, 20th, and 23rd of September. When Nelson arrived last night, he presented Capuchin with a preliminary report that the concierge soon after stored in the club's safety deposit box. The vault's night watchman, Stephen Bethany, corroborates this, as does the register. Before going to the vault, Capuchin invited Nelson to join a game of five-card stud being assembled by member Felix McTurk. McTurk had been a resident at the club since the 5th of August when his wife demanded a separation under the provisions of the Matrimonial Causes Act. And in the interim, he had grown bored of playing whist and bridge. The poker game began at 7:30 in the tarot room, a private chamber restricted to founding members, but temporary dispensations can be extended to others at the discretion of the concierge. Capuchin invited Nelson to join the game because Nelson was the only other member in attendance that was experienced at playing poker. The other three players were founding members: Harris Behan, owner of private bank J.J. Behan and Company; Bram Hux, study natural philosopher and owner of the Craftsman Mechanics Technicians Modern Dwelling Company; Felix McTurk, owner of McTurk and Company, diamond dealers and co-founder of the League for the Aid of the Dispossessed Poor. The game concluded at 2 o'clock, at which time Capuchin approved Nelson's request to store his winnings, £99, in the club's safe deposit box until they could be collected after Nelson's bank opened. Before Nelson visited the vault, he and Capuchin discussed the half-year audit in the foyer, after which Capuchin returned to the tarot room to tidy up. According to Bethany and the strong room's register, Nelson arrived at the vault at 2:15 a.m., stored his winnings, and departed the strong room 1 minute later. During this same time, McTurk and Hux retired to their rooms at the club, and Behan departed. Hux told me he often stays at the club when he has business the next day, nearer to Newington Green than to his home in Piccadilly, 47 Ashley Street. As for Behan, the attendance register documents he departed at 2:07 and was the next to final member to vacate the club. Capuchin returned to the front desk at 2:25 a.m. and discovered Nelson had written a departure time of 2:18 a.m. in the attendance register, but so far I have found no witness who saw him leaving the club or outside it at this time. Capuchin and Bethany both attest that the concierge placed the day's receipts in the club's safe deposit box a few minutes after the club's doors were locked at 3 a.m., after which Capuchin escorted Bethany out. The attendance register documents this was 3:07 a.m. He then conducted his nightly rounds and retired to his suite at 3:30 a.m., where he remained until 11 a.m. Capuchin resides at the club. The day watchman, Duncan MacLeod, comes on duty at 1 p.m., 1 hour before the club opens. So Capuchin was alone when he collected the previous day's receipts from the vault, but he states he immediately summoned a constable after discovering Nelson's body. When Crossmore arrived at 11:23 a.m., he found the strong room door open and Nelson lying curled upon his left side, not breathing. Crossmore instructed Capuchin to notify the divisional station, and when I arrived, Crossmore verified that the vault and body were precisely as he had found them. The strong room was vacant except for Nelson's body. A search of his pockets produced 1 house key, 1 cigarette case stocked with Joy's cigarettes, 1 Vesta case stocked with no matches, and 2 Banks pencils, a loose pencil nub, 1 penknife, and 1 coin purse, £3, 3 shilling, and 5 dimes. A cursory examination of the body revealed contusions to the palms, sides of hands, and fingertips. There were also 4 burnt matches on the floor, likely spent for illumination. After the body was removed, McTurk, Hucks, and Bethany were fetched to provide their accounts. Behan could not appear because he was en route to Kingston upon Hull for business. Bethany seemed perplexed and insisted that the vault was vacant when he and Capuchin locked it last night. I had Bethany open the club's box to confirm that Nelson's 99 pounds and his preliminary audit report were still inside, with the club's monetary records and its take from the previous day. Regarding the strong room's interior, it is 6 feet wide, 12 feet long, 7 feet tall. The floor and ceiling are constructed of steel panels. The entrance is monopolized by the safe door, which uses a dual control combination lock. The side and rear walls are monopolized by safety deposit boxes. All of the boxes require 2 keys to open, and there are only 3 copies of the guard key. One is assigned to a watchman during his shift, and the other 2 are in the permanent possession of Capuchin and the club's proprietor, Edward B. Presley. Signed, Sergeant Hobart Floyd. And here is the final letter page from Herbert Floyd. Dear Mr. Holmes, I think you will agree that Dr. Watson receiving a visitor with a nearly identical name to the man found dead in the Skeleton Club's strong room is curiously coincidental, but there is more to this. Yesterday, I interviewed a 3rd Philip H. Nelson who resides in London, Philip Henry Nelson, aged 47. Nelson has lived at 20 Paul Tottenham since being mustered out of the 62nd Foot in 1881, during which time his primary occupation has been yellowback author and miscellaneous writer. The man has received no threats of late, nor does he admit to knowing of the Skeleton Club, but he recalled an odd incident on the 22nd of September. His account. I was returning from St. Mary's when I saw a beggar. They frequent Church Row, especially after services, but this one was new to me. Most have some quirk that makes them memorable or sympathetic, but this fellow was typical in size, with a plain, clean-shaven face. Not so young, but not older than 40. Had a working man's accent, was dressed in ragged clothes, had a pair of iron-hand supporters for crawling around the street. Said he was a bricklayer who broke his legs, and that he had a wife and 8 children. I dropped 4 pennies into his box. As I did, he asked for my profession, and when I told him, he insisted I wasn't being true. In fact, he was so determined I was lying that I attempted to retrieve my pennies. Nelson has not seen this beggar since that day, and based on inquiries throughout the boroughs, no one else in Camden has either. Do you make anything of this? I feel these Nelsons must be related, but somehow I cannot see how. Let me add that the post-mortem examination of Hillcrest Nelson was completed on the evening of the 25th of September, but the commissioner insists on reviewing it before its details can be released. Standing of the Skeleton Club's reputed proprietor has him cautious. Yours, very truly yours, H. Floyd. All right, there is our first letter. Quite fascinating, really. I'm going to file this away for us to mark up. You can see how different the structure is compared to the letter from last time. All narrative, not a puzzle. But we've got, we've got a locked room murder. We've got a murder of one guy who's been died in a vault. We're not quite sure how he died. And then we've got this very odd thing where people with the same name of the person who died are having strange things happen. Okay. Melissa says, I'm confused by the storyline. It's all over the place. Well, it's a complicated case, but let's scan through it and make our note. Okay, so we've got someone they say is asphyxiated. Philip Hillcrest Nelson. The middle names are going to be important because that's the different one. Okay, and then this guy is the guy that's died in the vault, in the safe room. But then there's two other Philip Nelsons. All right, and here is our assignment. How did he end up dead? What's the connection between the three Nelsons? And why is someone angry at the generic personages of Herbert Nelson? All right, so now, then we're told that Watson actually gets a visit by Philip Herbert Nelson. So it's Philip H. Nelson's. The one that's dead is Hillcrest. The one that visited Watson is Herbert. So this guy, this is number 1, is our dead body. Number 2 is the guy who visited Watson. And he says that someone delivered a letter to him, delivered a message. He describes the person who delivered the message, someone with a Cockney accent, about 35, average mustache beard. My employer, says the guy, giving you the chance to make things square. So it sounds like the employer is killing all the Nelsons, Philip H. Nelsons. He says, you've got one chance by tomorrow night. And he says, you know what you did. You've got one chance to make it right. And then he convinced them I'm the wrong he tried to convince the messenger he was the wrong person, but the next day he gets a new message that says, you're the one, all right. And then the sick means that the error in the transcript is original. That's what SIC means. Someone can tell me. It's probably Latin for something. But if you don't know what SIC means, it's whenever you're quoting something and you want to make clear that there is an error in the statement, but the error is with the original statement, not with the way it's being written. So in this case, what it's saying is normally grammatically you would write this Y-O-U apostrophe R-E. You are the one, all right. But the note said you're the one. And then the SIC means this is how the note actually read. The errors with the original. This seems to be connecting with the common accent mark, suggesting to us that the person writing these notes is a commoner, not a very learned man. SIC is from Latin. It means so or thus. In other words, thus the original read. Okay. Masculine and smudgy. Okay. This guy who got this note took it to the police. Now, when is this note? This is the day of this. So actually, we might find out that Herbert Nelson is going to get killed overnight. He's not dead yet, though. Goes to the police. The police say there's nothing we can do. He hasn't broken any laws. And we're told about what he is, what his profession is. He works at Killian, Sanford, and Montrose. Where does he say that? He's a barrister's clerk. Okay, so he's a lawyer's clerk. Clerk, just a clerk. Okay. He says, I come home, I have neither family nor friends. I have never deliberately harmed anyone. So he's not involved in gambling. It's a case of mistaken identity, we think. Okay, and then we hear about the death of the guy in the vault. Here's more details of it. Lots of details. We hear about the Skeleton Club, which is a club for people who get turned away from other clubs. So maybe some rough people in this gang. We get told all about the timeline of the guy who died. We can come back to all of this, but almost all of this detail seems like it could be relevant for us. But a couple of things to note. First is this is a locked room murder in that they claim they locked up the vault and he wasn't in it. And then he's found in the vault. So everyone goes and plays poker, including our guy who's been invited because he knows poker. The game concluded at 2 o'clock, 2 a.m. Nelson asked to store his money in the safe deposit box, which they do. Afterward, and Nelson is doing some audit of the company. Afterwards, he goes to the tarot room. They check the register. Nelson arrived at the vault, stored his winnings, and departed. So Nelson leaves the vault at 2:15 a.m. Everyone goes back to their room. Most of them leave the club except for the guy who stays there. They see that Nelson has signed out of the whole establishment at 2:18 a.m. Leaves the vault, arrives at 2:15, leaves the vault at 2:16, departs from the whole club, or at least signs out at 2:18. And we get no one witnesses him leaving. But then we get that the club's doors are locked at 3 a.m. Okay, and then the security guard's doing rounds, 3:30 a.m. He goes to sleep until 11 a.m. So 3:30 to 11, there's no one patrolling. They open up and they find the body. Came on duty, let's see, conducted nightly rounds till 11 a.m. And that day watchman comes at 1 p.m. Does this tell us when they found the body? The vault was vacant when it was locked. According to the night watchman, the vault was vacant when it was locked at 3 a.m. So when Capuchin opens it up to collect his stuff, that's when he finds the body. Capuchin was alone. So when he collected. Okay, so here's your first possible solution to the locked room murder, which is that this guy's lying. Capuchin opens it up and he said at 11 a.m. or so, and he says the body's in there. He's asphyxiated. How did he get in there? Well, one possibility is Capuchin, the guy who runs this place, is lying. Then they call in the cop who arrives and verifies he's lying on his side, dead, and so on. They talk about the possessions on the body, house key, cigarette, no more matches, but there's 3 burned matches, which they think maybe because the lights were out. Then they fetch all the people that were in the club the last night. They give their alibis. One is out of town. Description of the room and who has keys to the room. Clearly, you can't dig in or anything, and it doesn't sound like you could really hide in there either, right? It's all small little boxes, so someone couldn't be hiding in a closet, as far as we know. Okay, the boxes require 2 keys. They're not opened. So tell us how many keys are needed to get into the room. The entrance, you don't need a key, but you need a dual control combination lock. That sounds... Okay, well, we know you don't need 2 people to get into the room because we know Capuchin was alone when he opened the door and discovered the body. So what does a dual control combination lock mean? The entrance is monopolized by the safe door, which uses a dual control combination lock. I thought that was meaning you needed 2 people, but clearly not, because he's alone. So what does dual control mean? The safe deposit box needs 2 keys, but there's no sign that anything's been removed from the room. It's just, how do you get into the entrance? He returns to the desk at 2:25. He sees Nelson has signed out. Then Capuchin and Bethany says the concierge placed the receipts in the safety deposit box at 3. So this is more evidence that it really was empty at 3. But that's not quite true, right? The concierge is the only guy who we think goes in at 3 a.m. It's not clear. So in other words, these 2 say that the concierge was in the vault and locked it at 3 a.m., presumably no body there. But if they didn't witness this, our other possibility is that the concierge sees the body but doesn't tell them. Who is the concierge? Who is the concierge? Are we told? According to the club's concierge, Laurent Capuchin, but this doesn't make sense. Capuchin and Bethany both attest that the concierge placed the day's receipts, but Capuchin is the concierge. That's a little weird. That sounds like a little bit of a bug. Does it mean to say Capuchin and Bethany both attest that Capuchin placed the receipts in the safety deposit box? And then Capuchin opens it up. That makes Capuchin a big, makes him a suspect. Okay, Marlene says, term means literally safe is controlled by two people, requires two people. Okay, well, that's the problematic basic. That disagrees with this idea that he did it alone, but maybe it means that you need a combination and a key. And Arsene, okay, I really gotta beg you guys, when you say something, to make clear whether you know it or it's your interpretation and you think it. So when Arsene says caption is saying something, the other person confirms it, you're saying it as if you know the answer, which is very confusing for me because I have to wonder, have I missed something that makes it super clear, or are you just saying that's your interpretation? Okay, so there's two possibilities here. Marlene is suggesting that this means it needs a key and a combination, or it could be a key or a combination, or Rob thinks it means two people to enter. It surely seems like they're not saying two people need it. So maybe this means key and combination. And then here, I'm going to assume that the comment in the chat is that your interpretation of this statement, one person's interpretation, is that it means Capuchin and Bethany both attest that Capuchin placed the day's receipts. Okay, well, that's, regardless, it's not clear who, if anyone, witnessed Capuchin doing that. And then we have a third Philip H. Nelson, who reports a very odd encounter with a beggar. And he says it's an ordinary beggar, plain, clean shaven, who is a bricklayer who broke his legs, a wife and 8 children. And when he gives this guy money, he says, he asked for my profession. And when I told him, he insisted I wasn't being true. In fact, he was so determined I was lying, I was tempted to retrieve my money. That guy sounds crazy, this beggar. This guy, Philip H. Nelson, is a writer, not a barrister, not a clerk, and isn't a member of the Skeleton Club. The beggar says you're a liar about your profession, and this happened when? On the 22nd. So actually, this happens a week ago. So we have some madman who's been wronged by someone named Philip H. Nelson, and he's on the hunt for the right Philip H. Nelson to get revenge on. That's certainly what it seems like. And it's going all the way back to a week ago. But this guy doesn't get killed. He just gets accosted. So, I mean, you could already guess that the answer to number 2 is that this person just thinks that someone named Philip, some barrister's clerk or something named Philip H. Nelson, is responsible for something bad, and now he's accosting all of them trying to find the right one. The one that was killed is the one that was killed was doing the audit. What's his actual profession? A freelance accountant. Chartered accountant doing an audit. And the guy who's come in asking for Holmes's help is a barrister's clerk, pretty similar. This guy's probably going to end up killed. Then how do you kill this guy in this room? Rob is asking a question that seems unrelated to this case, but Mrs. Hoyt has picked up on it. Yesterday I interviewed. Okay, well, what's happened is Floyd has noticed a coincidence between something and investigated it. Where's our list of who has keys? We're told there are only a couple people who have keys. There are only 3 copies of the guard key. One is assigned to the watchman, and then Capuchin and Edward Presley, the proprietor. So you can imagine 2 overarching possibilities to consider. One is that what it looks like on the face of it, we've got someone who was wronged by someone named Philip H. Nelson and is trying to get revenge. The other possibility, of course, is that you want to kill one specific person, so you're going to make it look like a madman is killing all people with his name so that you throw suspicion away from you. But that seems very far-fetched, especially given this totally random accosting of this guy a week ago. So it does sound like we've got a madman who is trying to find someone who's wronged him, and he doesn't know the exact person. If that's true, then it's obviously not someone who knows him at the club, right? Because if the person knew him personally, he wouldn't be hunting around for someone with his name. This has to be someone who only knows Philip Nelson by some letter. So one of the Philip Nelsons are going to be guilty, going to be involved in this. Probably this guy who's actually dead. But I guess that's going to depend on what happens to this other guy who someone knocked on his door. My employer is giving you the chance. I wonder if this guy really does have an employer or if this isn't our suspect. And how is he going to put things right? How is he asking him to put things right? Uh, who is Bethany? We're told about Bethany when we get the. Let's see. Are we told about him? He's not one of the poker players. The night watchman is Stefan Bethany. So the night watchman would have access to the vault, and so would Capuchin. So, and then we have the poker players who probably have nothing to do with anyone. But Bethany is Bethany the one they couldn't talk to? No, who's the one they couldn't talk to because he was out of town? Soon after they find the body, McKirk, Hux, and Bethany are fetched. Behan, which is the other guy who was at the poker, Harris Behan was the guy at the poker club, is out of town. Okay, Bethany seemed perplexed. The night watchman, Bethany, seemed perplexed. Insisted the vault was vacant when they locked it last night. So if Bethany and Capuchin lock it up, then where's the third key? Edward Presley, the owner of the club. Certainly doesn't seem like that has anything to do with the madman who would be mad at them. The chat is pointing out the other angle that we haven't even talked about, the bruises. That's a great question. Let us The audit report is still inside, but obviously someone could have swapped it. Where is the report about the hands? It's probably in the newspaper report. Where are the details about how his hands were found? That was quite interesting, actually. The body were where we found them, curled up. He has his cigarettes, no matches, but the matches have been lit for illumination. We're told about the room. It's just filled with safety deposit boxes. Where are we told about the condition of his hands? There. He's got contusions to the palms, sides of hands, and fingertips. I guess that would sound like you would get those kinds of wounds banging on the door, trying to get someone to let you out. Probably, I assume we're going to find that it's airtight in here, but we don't really know. And we have to assume that that's how he asphyxiated, because it was airtight. Otherwise, something else. It is a little odd that he hasn't tried to scribble anything on the wall or anything, right? Like if you were locked in a room and you couldn't get out and you felt like you were running out of air, you might try to use the knife somehow to try to get the door lock open, or you might write on the floor or wall with your pencil. You might be trying to suck air from the gap under the door or something. All right. Well, lots to think about. I do like a good locked room mystery. All right, we're going to end here, but I'll see you again next week when we'll read letter number 2. Hopefully we'll have some more facts to put together. I have a bad feeling about this other person named Nelson who visited Holmes Watson today. You know, he's been given a deadline of 1 day, and that deadline's going to be up. I'll see you all next week.